I'm going to start with two things that many drivers do and they can get away with it for years. It's not obvious, but it is putting extra wear on a component of the clutch and it can lead to a very expensive repair bill. The first thing is resting their foot on the clutch. So when they finish changing gear, instead of removing their foot from the clutch, they rest the weight of their foot on the clutch pedal. They're not pressing it in much at all, just leaning on it, moving it in ever so slightly. And the other thing, well, it's waiting with their foot on the clutch in traffic. So for example, when I get past these bus stops, I'll pull over at the side of the road. So I'll pull over now. And when I'm waiting to go, I'll wait with my clutch down in gear. This might be in traffic, this might be at traffic lights. But both of these things wear the same component of the clutch. It's called a clutch release bearing. On screen is one that's knackered after just 40,000 miles of pupils holding the clutch down when waiting in traffic, at traffic lights, and hovering over the clutch. At least that's what I was told. I've never allowed my pupils to rest their foot on the clutch pedal, but occasionally when I would ask my pupil to move their foot away from the clutch pedal, they may say, "I'm only hovering," and I would let that go. Okay, you're not pressing it, fine. I can't really tell the difference. I'm trying to concentrate on the road. I can see in the corner of my eye that they're over the clutch, but I'm not looking down here like that. Is that down a little bit or not? I can't do that. So I was taking their word for it, but evidence suggests that they were, or at least some of them were, resting on the pedal. Maybe not straight away, but after fatigue sets in, eventually they were starting to lean on that pedal a little bit because my clutch release bearing was knackered. That was a long time ago. These days I don't allow that to happen and I've not had the same problem. These days, if I ask my pupil to move their foot away from the clutch pedal and they tell me they are only hovering, step away from the clutch. The clutch release bearing itself isn't actually usually that much money, somewhere between 20 and £100, but getting to it is the expensive bit. Often it takes a day's labour to get to it, and by the time you spend that money getting to it, you may as well replace the whole clutch. And if you're replacing the whole clutch, the garage is likely going to recommend replacing the flywheel also, because when you fit a new clutch to an old flywheel, there is always the risk of getting clutch judder, where you lift the clutch to the bite point and the car sort of judders as you move away. And you're not going to know whether or not that's going to happen until you do the work. So you can end up spending a lot of money because you're resting your foot on the clutch a little bit or holding down the clutch when waiting in traffic for long periods of time. After wearing out the clutch release bearing, I did change my driving style slightly and how I teach slightly. When waiting in traffic or at traffic lights, I use neutral and bring the clutch up, and also I get my pupils to use neutral and bring the clutch up also. The extra effort of having to press the clutch down and select the gear every time I want to get going is far less than the effort of continuously holding the clutch down. So it's a much nicer way of driving. Also, it's far less effort for the clutch release bearing. So win for me, win for the car. The next one is resting your hand on the gear stick. This actually causes extra wear and it can lead to an astronomical bill. Although in Great Britain, with how long cars usually last before they're scrapped, it's unlikely that you're actually going to get this bill. I'm going to use my daughter's toy to demonstrate what's happening here. This red thing represents the gear selector and my two fingers represent the gear selector fork. When you move the gear stick, you're moving the gear selector fork, which is connected to the gear selector, so you're moving the gear selector like so. The gear selector is always spinning, but the gear selector fork is stationary. When you're leaning on the gear stick, you're actually pushing the fork into the selector, creating friction, which creates wear. And eventually it's going to wear out. It takes a long time, and cars in this country generally aren't on the road long enough for it to become a problem. It's not very often you hear about someone's gear selector fork wearing out on their gear selector. But it is a potential problem, and it means you're going to need either a new gearbox, a gearbox rebuild, or maybe replacing it with a used gearbox. Either way, it's not likely going to be under £1,000, probably several thousands of pounds to sort the issue, all for a very fancy handrest. The next one is selecting first gear when you're at speed. And when I say at speed, I mean anything more than about 5 miles an hour. So I'm slowing down now, I'm about 15, I'm putting it into first. That was quite stiff. I can even hear it whine slightly as I put it into gear. I could hear the synchronizer speed up the gear. First gear has a very different ratio to the rest of the gears. It's quite a step between first and second. And when the wheels are spinning at speed, there is a component in the gearbox that's under stress when you're trying to select first gear. I'm going to use my daughter's toy again to demonstrate what's happening here. The toy represents the car's gearbox. At one end of the gearbox is the car's engine, and my fist represents the engine. The engine has a clutch on it, which means when you press the clutch down, you can actually disconnect the engine from the gearbox, meaning they can rotate independently of each other. When your clutch is up, the engine and the gearbox are connected, meaning they must rotate together. What's important to understand here though, is that when the clutch is down and the engine and the gearbox are disconnected, that does not mean the gears stop spinning, because at the other end of the gearbox are your wheels and tyres. If the car is moving, the wheels and tyres are spinning, the gears are spinning. The faster the wheels are spinning, the faster the gears are spinning. And first gear has a significantly different ratio compared to the rest of the gears. It's a bigger step, it's the biggest step. And if your wheels are spinning quickly and you try to select first gear's gear selector and synchromesh needs to speed up first gear to match the speed of the wheels to engage. And that puts more wear on first gear's synchromesh and gear selector than it would if you were to select first gear when the wheels were spinning slowly, say less than 5 miles per hour. Riding the clutch is also bad. At the moment I'm on a hill, and if I come off the brake, you'll see the car starts rolling back. Now, one way I could get around this is by pushing the car forwards enough to stop it rolling back, but not enough to make it roll forwards. And I can do this by getting first gear, getting a little bit of gas and lifting the clutch to the bite point, just enough that I don't roll back. If I lift the clutch a bit more, I start rolling forwards. If I push the clutch down, then I'm going to start rolling back. If I get it just right and push the car just enough, I can stop it rolling backwards without rolling forwards. Now this is very bad for the clutch. A far less common way to ride the clutch is to stay on the clutch about halfway up after changing gear. So the driver changes gear, lifts the clutch to the bite point and then holds it there. So they've got a partial connection of the clutch. They've got less power going to the wheels. The car is likely to be jerky. It's a little bit jerky now that I'm holding the clutch about halfway up as I change how much gas I'm giving, and I'm wearing out the clutch. I'm going to use my daughter's toy again to demonstrate what's happening here. This time, it doesn't represent the gearbox. The red thing, that represents the engine's flywheel, which spins when the engine's on. It spins faster the more you rev the engine. And this orange thing represents the clutch. When you lift the clutch up, it's connected to the flywheel and they spin together. When you push the clutch down, they're disconnected and the engine and the clutch can spin independently. The clutch is connected to the wheels and tyres via the gearbox when you are in gear. That's important to know, because if you're in first gear with the clutch down, so the clutch is disconnected but you're in first gear, and the car starts rolling forwards down a hill, the clutch will start spinning with the wheels and tyres. If the car starts rolling backwards down a hill, it will start spinning backwards with the wheels and tyres. So if you start rolling back, that means this clutch is spinning backwards, but the engine's on. You see, what you can do is lift the clutch up, and if you lift it just right and put it just under enough pressure to stop the clutch from rolling backwards and stop the wheels and the weight of the car from rolling down the hill, you can actually get the clutch stationary with slippage. If you lift it too much, you're putting it under more pressure, more friction, and actually start to spin forwards, and the car will start to go forwards up the hill with the engine. But if you get the pressure just right, you can have this slippage where the clutch is stationary, therefore your wheels and tyres are stationary, but the engine is still spinning and there's friction here between the engine's flywheel and the clutch. That generates heat. That wears your clutch out. The hotter your clutch gets, the quicker it wears. So you want to minimize clutch slippage. You don't want to get rid of it completely because you'll be very jerky and that will put other components of your vehicle under pressure. But ideally, when you lift the clutch up to the engine's flywheel, when you get to the bite point, you should let the wheels start to spin forwards, and eventually they lock together, they go at the same speed, spin together, so there's no slippage. That keeps your clutch cool, that makes it last longer. Don't hold the clutch at the bite point whilst the wheels are stationary. That's a very sure and quick way of wearing out your clutch. If the driver doesn't come fully off the clutch after changing gear, they hold the clutch at the bite point for a long period of time. Maybe they hold it there until the next gear shift. Well, a similar thing's going to be happening. There's going to be slippage between the engine flywheel and the clutch. Not as bad as holding the car stationary on the hill where the clutch is stationary and the engine's spinning and there's a big difference between the two speeds, generating a lot of friction and a lot of heat. They're still going to be spinning at slightly different speeds sometimes because the clutch is not fully connected to the flywheel. There's some slippage here, more heat, more clutch wear from that friction caused by the slippage. When the driver has finished changing gear, they should fully come off the clutch to lock the clutch and the flywheel together hard so that they spin together at the same speed without slippage. That keeps your clutch cool, that reduces clutch wear, and it gives you better control over the speed of your vehicle via the gas pedal. The next one is selecting reverse whilst the car is moving. You don't want to do that. Or selecting reverse as soon as you press the clutch down, you shove it in quick. You don't want to do that either. Because if you select reverse when the car is moving, or the moment you press the clutch down, you go into reverse, you can get a horrible sound. And you don't want that to happen. What you want is the car to be fully stationary, clutch down, wait a couple of seconds, and then you can select reverse without any horrible grinding sounds. Now I need to explain why you get those grinding sounds. Again, I'm going to use my daughter's toy to demonstrate what's happening here. This thing is proving quite versatile. Again, it represents the gearbox. At one end you have the engine, which can be disconnected and reconnected via the clutch. So if they're disconnected, the engine and the gears can spin independently of each other. If they're connected, they'll spin together. At the other end of the gearbox, you have the wheels and tires. And if the wheels and tires are moving, the gears are moving. There's some movement in the gearbox. Doesn't matter if you're in gear or in neutral, there's still going to be some movement. So with that in mind, this will make sense. When you select reverse, you actually introduce another gear into the system. And the reason why you introduce another gear into the system is because when you do that, you reverse the direction of the gears. You see, if one gear spins one way, it makes the other gear spin the other way. And that's how you go backwards in the car, adding another gear to reverse direction. But if your wheels are moving when you try to select reverse, the gears are moving. So you're trying to select reverse whilst the gears are moving. You get grinding, as you can see. It won't go in, will it? When it's stationary, you can get it to go in, but when it's moving, you can't, which is why you need to make sure the wheels are stationary so that the gears are stationary. And the reason why you have to hold the clutch down for a couple of seconds before you select reverse is because when you push the clutch down, yes, you separate the engine from the gears. The gears are going to stop spinning if the wheels aren't spinning, but they have some inertia in them. They don't stop immediately. They stop much more quickly than this one does because this doesn't have much friction at all. But they take a second or two to stop. So if you wait a second or two, it will stop and then you can select reverse without grinding your gears. You don't have to worry about this for forward gears because forward gears don't introduce another gear. They just get clamped down to the shaft via a synchromesh. So then they spin with the shaft instead of loosely on the shaft. Reverse very rarely gets a synchromesh. There are some gearboxes that have a synchromesh in reverse, in which case you can select reverse whilst rolling forwards or as soon as you press the clutch down. But most gearboxes and most passenger cars do not have a synchromesh in reverse. So it's better to hold the clutch down for a couple of seconds when the car is fully stationary and then select reverse to prevent any grinding. The next one is using too many revs when moving away. 3, 2, 1. Oh, not good for the clutch. No, good for a launch, but oh, can't smell it, so I haven't done too bad, but that's a lot of slippage. Now I'm stationary, I can actually smell a hint of clutch in the air. This is my daughter's toy. I'm going to use it to demonstrate what's happening again. This red thing represents the engine's flywheel that's spinning when I'm revving the engine, and the orange thing represents the clutch, which is stationary because the wheels were stationary. No, it's definitely the clutch. My deodorant smells different. So when I revved the engine, I revved it to around about 4,000 RPM. That means this thing was turning 4,000 times every minute. I can't do that with my hand. And the clutch is stationary. When I lifted the clutch to the engine flywheel to get the wheels moving, it overheated instantly. Giving too many revs when you lift the clutch is the quickest way to wear out your clutch. Giving 4,000 revs as you lift the clutch overheats the clutch instantly. If you do that, you are likely to smell your clutch after moving away. When moving the car, it's important to give less than 2,000 revs. That way you're not going to overheat the clutch. A little bit over 2,000, you're still going to be okay. But once you start getting to 3 or 4, then you are overheating the clutch. You could try to move away without using the gas at all, no revs at all, but that's very slow and some cars will stall when you do that. I just about did it there because I'm downhill. It was slow. Some cars are going to struggle. This will struggle if you try to do that uphill, or if you try to move away quickly. So if you're learning to drive, it is important to use some gas so that you learn the skill of using the gas and lifting the clutch, so that when you drive your own car or another car, you know how to do it and you're not going vroom and giving too much gas. Another thing to avoid is slamming it into gear hard and fast, quick as you can. You'll notice when you do that, the notch you feel as you go into gear is more significant, it's harder, and that's because you're not giving the system time to line up. You're not giving the synchromesh time to engage the gear. You'll find it's easier to go into gear if you do it gently and actually give it a little bit of time, so the system has time to do what it needs to do to engage that gear. Forcing the gear in quickly, well, two things really. One, you're more likely to get it wrong, more likely to do a money shift when you go into a very low gear at a high speed and destroy your engine, but also you're putting more strain on the system every time you change gear. So when you change gear, it's better to be gentle. Give it time. In a manual transmission, all of the forward gears are permanently meshed. They don't disconnect and connect like this or like this. They are all permanently meshed, and you have several gears along the shaft meshed to other gears. Whether or not a gear is selected is whether or not the gear is spinning loosely on the shaft or connected to the shaft. To select a gear, you move a gear selector. This is a gear selector. You see, that moves like this when you move the gear stick. The gear selector is permanently connected to the shaft. So when you move the gear selector towards the gear by moving the gear stick, you connect the gear to the gear selector, which is connected to the shaft, therefore they all spin. This gear is now selected. When you pull it out of gear, you move the gear selector away from the gear, meaning the gear can now spin loosely on the shaft again. It is no longer selected. Now, how these connect together is via teeth, a bit like this, and they have to mesh together. You don't want that happening, and you don't want them spinning at different speeds and grinding. You want them to slot into place. And to do that, you have a little clutch. It's called a synchronizer. It's like a collar, a metal collar. And as you push the gear selector towards the gear, it lines up the teeth and then slots into place, and then they're locked together. If you try and do it quickly by pushing the gear stick really hard, you're not giving that synchronizer, that mini little clutch, time to line up the teeth, and therefore it's stiff. If you push the gear stick gently, you're giving the synchronizer time to line up the teeth, and therefore it slots into place more easily. Reverse gear is the only gear that meshes when you select it. When you move the gear stick out of reverse, you disconnect that gear. All the forward gears are permanently meshed, and you have several along the shaft. They're meshed with other gears, but when you're in neutral, they all spin on the shaft. None of them are connected to the shaft, so they are not selected. When you select a gear, what you're doing is you're moving a gear selector to that gear to connect the gear to the shaft via the gear selector, so therefore that gear now spins with the shaft whilst the other gears still spin loosely. Don't labour the engine. Labouring the engine, or some people refer to it as lugging the engine, is when you're at low revs with lots of gas like I am now, trying to get the car to accelerate. The car's vibrating, it's not going much faster. I have high cylinder pressures, low cylinder speeds, lower circulation of the coolant, lower oil pressure. It's not a good condition for the engine. If you're trying to accelerate and the car isn't picking up speed and the revs are low and you feel the car is vibrating, it's making a deep sound, go down some gears, bring the revs up. Therefore the engine's going to find it much more easier now to accelerate. Many new drivers think that this sound, when you're revving the engine, that's the engine struggling, but it's not. The engine is producing power and it makes noise when it produces power. It's using a lot of fuel as well, but if you need the power, then you need to use the fuel. If you have very low revs, like I have now, and you push the gas hard and it's not really producing power, you're not using the fuel you're using efficiently. You're still using quite a lot of fuel, but you're not really going anywhere, and it's putting the engine under a lot of strain. Try to change gear smoothly. Don't just drop the clutch like I did there and make it jerky. Do put some effort into finding the bite point, pausing for a moment, and then coming off the clutch when you're changing gears, and be careful not to be jerky when you're moving away. I have met some drivers who are jerky when they change gears, and their reasoning has been, well, I don't want to wear the clutch, so I don't want to slip the clutch, so I come off the clutch quickly to avoid clutch wear. I don't know if you saw that there, but I did jerk the car quite badly, worse than I thought I was going to. But the thing is, when you shock the car, you are putting the car under stress. You're putting the gear stick, well, not gear stick, sorry, the gearbox under stress. You're putting the clutch under stress, just in a different way. You're putting the shock springs of the clutch under stress. You're putting the engine mounts under stress. There are plenty of things you can wear out from being jerky. So a little bit of clutch slippage to smooth things out overall is ideal. And so long as you're not slipping the clutch too much, your clutch is going to stay cool, and therefore it's not going to wear out quickly. After all, the clutch is designed to slip a bit. Therefore, it smooths things out and you have less shock. You can use the gas to manually rev match, and I have a video up there all about rev matching, so that the clutch doesn't have to rev match for you. But that is more for driving enthusiasts. The everyday driver generally doesn't think about rev matching manually with the gas. They just use the clutch to rev match for them so that they can change gears smoothly. If you found the video helpful, please give it a thumbs up. And if you're looking for car insurance, check out the links to Collingwood and Confused in the description. If you're learning to drive and want to insure yourself on somebody else's car, then Collingwood are there for you, because you can do so without affecting the owner's policy. And that takes away a big stress from the owner of the car that you're using to practice learning to drive in. Via the link at the moment, there's up to 35% off and a £20 gift card. If you want to insure your own car, I recommend checking out the link to confused.com, because you fill out one quote form and get loads of quotes back from many insurers to compare who's cheapest. And you can change your car on that quote as many times as you like without having to do the whole quote again. So it's a quick and easy way to compare how much it costs to insure different cars. Using the links doesn't cost you anything, but it does support the channel, so thank you very much. Subscribe to get my future videos, and until the next one, cheerio.